This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. Here's your host, Cory Klippsten.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. On this week's episode, I interviewed Cory Klippsten from Swan Bitcoin. I wanted to talk to the other Cory in the Bitcoin space, but I wanted to talk to him about Swan because Swan is a great platform to buy Bitcoin. They allow you to do dollar cost averaging, so that you're automatically buying Bitcoin, X number of dollars worth of Bitcoin every week. If you want to take part of your weekly paycheck and turn it into Bitcoin, it helps you dollar cost average and not worry about timing the market. So I wanted to talk to him about that, the origins of the company and how he got into Bitcoin. Then we also get into other things like models and longevity in Bitcoin and what the Timechain means and all that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed my conversation with Cory. Today, the show sponsor is Coinbeast Connect. Do you have questions about Bitcoin? Personalize your learning and book a one-on-one video call with a Bitcoin pro on Coinbeast Connect. Learn about mining, security, the Lightning Network, DeFi, taxes, and many other topics. It's really easy. Choose your topic and pro, select the date when you're available, and bring your questions to the meeting room. Book your first call today by going to coinbeast.com and clicking on the Connect tab. Be prepared for the financial revolution and get the knowledge you need. Also brought to you by Movies Plus. Movies Plus is my platform that you've heard me talk about many times, I'm sure. But it is a streaming platform that we launched. You can download the apps. Just go into any app store, search Movies Plus. And then the web's address is mymoviesplus.com. And we have a lot of content up there. We're adding 5 new horror movies a day through the month of October. And we're adding literally thousands and thousands of titles. So it's kind of hard to keep up with how much content we're getting. So it's a great place. There's some Bitcoin content on there. I have Richard James's series, and we're going to be developing some more stuff and everything. So if you want to check it out, use the code. If you're signing up for an annual, you can get the whole a subscription for a year for $25 if you use the code BTC year. And if you want to try it for a month and get the discount down to $5 for 1 month, the code is BTC month. So that's BTC year for an annual and BTC month for a monthly. I hope you guys check it out. And there's a couple things on there too. Just download the app because we have a free speech category that is content that is available to everyone, regardless if you're a subscriber or not. So the Bitcoin stuff is in there right now. So if you want to check that out, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Let me know if you want to get in contact with the show. The Twitter handle is at Bitcoin Simply. My personal one is at Cory_Klippsten. And the show email is bitcoinmadesimplepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks. Yeah, I had one podcast where both the kids actually crashed it. And like it was just like they how kids are. I mean, they just blindly walk past any signals where you're like no, and they're just like, what's the big deal? So yeah, it's all good. But I see, is that a Chicago? Is that
it
Bears?
Is yes. No, University of Chicago.
Oh, University of Chicago. Okay.
Yeah, the one with the crappy sports teams.
So you didn't go to not Northwestern or anything like that. Are you originally from Chicago?
No, I grew up in Marin County in the Bay Area and Seattle. So I was mostly in Seattle.
Okay. Does that make you a Seahawks fan?
Oh yeah, huge Seahawks fan.
Okay, well, I'm glad you guys got I'm a Steelers fan. I'm from Pittsburgh, so we had that one face-off in the Super Bowl.
Yes, 2006. I remember. I threw a lot of things at the wall there and kind of killed my own Super Bowl party that day.
Oh yeah, don't have Super Bowl parties when your team is in it. I've learned that.
Very bad idea.
But that well, it's funny that Super Bowl was like the one. Like I've joked before and said that the Seahawks wanted to lose that one a little bit more than the Steelers did. Like it was just neither team played good. Like it was just a mess, but at least you guys got one eventually.
We did get one eventually. Probably should have had 3 this decade, but one of the most underachieving should have been dynasties is like the 2010s Seahawks only getting the one Super Bowl. It's pretty sad.
I know. I mean, I've never been more upset than whenever they blew it on that for another team. I mean, than whenever they blew it against the Patriots.
The Patriots, that was pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
But little known fact, the Swan color palette is actually mostly the Seahawks colors.
Okay.
I figured they probably paid a expensive consultant, so I just went on like teamcolors.com or whatever and grabbed all their Pantones, and yeah, that's most of the Swan colors.
Yeah, it's funny how resourceful us entrepreneurs can be, because you look at something like that and it's literally they spent millions of dollars probably getting that color palette fixed, and you're like, you know what, that's a pretty good idea. Let's go with
Pretty
that.
good. Yeah, it looks good. Deep blue. I'm with it.
Yeah. So since TJ Wilson asked, we have to talk about hair to start. So is this I haven't been in the space too long. Have you always had long hair, or is it just is this a newer thing?
No, I just this is cut probably 6 weeks ago, but like it's just hard to get out. I'm busy, and there've been so many like rolling lockdowns. I'm in Southern California, just outside LA, and like really hard to get a haircut around here. Yeah. In fact, our nanny went to beauty school during lockdown, and so now she's cutting my hair.
Oh, nice.
So I got to get her to stop by and cut. But yeah, I mean, ideally it would be like right here, but there was one stretch of like, I don't know, 9 months or something in the worst of it. And yeah, it was Jesus length. It was pretty rough.
That's my wife saw my tweet where I said, "Oh, maybe I should grow out." She's like, "No, because
don't do it. Don't do it." Yeah.
Once you get past a certain length, once you get past that awkward phase, then you're like, all right, I can go with. But it is that hard transition between long and short hair, and I've done it, I think, 2 or 3 times in my life, and I don't think I'm doing it. It used to be I played hockey, so it would flow out the back of my helmet. I like that.
Oh, there you go. That's badass. Yeah, if you can have like the wind blowing in your hair out of the helmet, like that's pretty solid right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't have the longest hair in the Bitcoin Twitter sphere at all last year. I mean, quit him. Brandon is high, like he's got his hair pulled back. Like there's a hell of a knot at the back there that I don't know if anybody's ever actually seen it completely unfurled, but I think he's got a lot of hair. And until Rob Breedlove cut his hair, I mean, his was like past his chest.
Yeah. He was. It was right in time with it must have been a BitClout thing. It was like a bet. Like somebody said, if you do BitClout ever, you have to cut your hair, because it's like right around that same time.
I can't remember. I think he cut it when he was abroad, actually, before all that. But anyway,
no, he had one heck. That was one heck of a mane though.
Yeah, it was solid.
But thanks for coming on, and I'm sure you've told your origin story, but just if you could give a quick recap of how you got into Bitcoin, just for anybody that's listening that hasn't heard before, because I think we all like hearing the origin stories.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I used to work for really big companies, so I worked for like Microsoft and Morgan Stanley, McKinsey, Google. Went to B school at University of Chicago, and it was probably the global financial crisis and just kind of seeing the sands shifting a little bit. And I'd been spending so much of my time in my career like fixing other people's problems, and I just got it in my head, like, you know what, I want to do early stage tech startups where I control my own destiny. I want to be entrepreneurial. I want to just like kind of create problems for other people that they can go fix.
Yeah. I know that's the best part. When you get to the point where you can hire people to fix the problems.
Yeah. That's so that's what I was thinking. So I jumped out of corporate in summer of 2013, and I had been kind of advising some startups and cutting some angel checks. And so I just started doing that full time and looking for places to operate and get involved. Most of my background was kind of like video, ad tech, marketing. All my consulting work for 7 years post B school had been like top line sales, marketing focused, kind of just driving revenue. So that's kind of the value that I added in the startup world was, marketing and sales ops. And I'd also been I'd been raising money since like 2004 for all kinds of different things. So I had a kind of a spike in fundraising and was good at that. And that was pretty valuable. So we had moved to LA at the beginning of 2013, and I started mixing it up with the Silicon Valley startups and getting to know all the VCs and all the founders, and just getting kind of passed around as like a fractional chief strategy officer, essentially. Like when you're an early stage startup, like seed to be, sub 9-figure valuation, it doesn't make sense to have somebody like me full time. After you're like 100 million valuation, you can afford to hire somebody like me full time. So, helping companies get through those first, 2 to 4 years until they hit that level was a really good niche for me. And it got, so I've been in startups for 8 years. I've invested or advised and kind of on the cap table of like 45 or 50 startups. And that's been cleaved exactly in two by getting into Bitcoin in spring of 2017 with the last bull run. And, like I have a lot of empathy for people that get confused about, what is money? What is Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin the next, is Bitcoin MySpace and Facebook is around the corner? Because that's what I got suckered into, because coming from startup land and VC land and the podcasts I listened to and the signals that I had were coming from people who were really smart about, SaaS and market networks and marketplaces and video and ad tech and all the things that I cared about. And so I would just listen for the most part to what Andreessen Horowitz is saying or what Fred Wilson at USV is saying. And that, was my social signal. And so I thought it was crypto, let's create 1 million fucking tokens. And, maybe Bitcoin is there, but I'm like not going to go super deep on it. And so, yeah, it wasn't until like the tail end, it was probably like November of 2017 that something like pricked my consciousness enough to get me into the Bitcoin only Twitter sphere a little bit and start plugging into the YouTubes. And over the next few months, I think by April of 2018, I realized I didn't ever want to read another white paper or look at another deck. And so, no more crypto for me. And I just started trying to orient my career and just all of my time, just getting deeper into Bitcoin, kind of plugging in and figuring out, is there something that I can do to add value in this space? And, over the next 9 months or so, kind of the rest of 2018, I had actually done a lot of payments work previously. And so my orientation initially was like, well, let me do something, that I already know how to do. And, I got more of an understanding of Bitcoin and kind of thought, this is probably going to be more of a store of value, developing store of value story for the next 5 to 10 years. And, I think Bitcoin as a medium of exchange is probably, 5 to 10 years away at like venture scale returns for those companies. So, I still place bets on those companies and like just cut little angel checks into lightning companies and stuff like that in case some of them just take off. And I think you're starting to see that, there are uses where Bitcoin as part of something that's really broader in fintech and you're trying to create like a mobile wallet or something like that. There are interesting things going on there. I just didn't see it at the time. So what I really wanted to focus on was just selling lots and lots of Bitcoin. And initially was looking at selling it to institutions and thinking about doing like a Bitcoin closed-end fund and going and doing the roadshow and kind of just aggregating a bunch of assets under management. But I wasn't really excited about that because I didn't want to do custodial. And I also didn't want to travel. And most of those deals require a lot of entertainment and, going and
whining and dining.
Yeah, you got to be in New York and at least take the meetings, right? And I just wasn't really interested in doing that. Got 2 kids and a family out here in SoCal, and I don't want to travel for business if I can help it. So I was like, you know what? I really am motivated by talking to the person who's actually affected by getting into Bitcoin, because that's magic and it's energizing. And I really enjoy that educational part of it. I want to scale that with media and code, and not have to do hand-to-hand one-on-one combat every time you're trying to orange pill somebody.
Yeah.
So I just, I kind of also had an inkling that, Bitcoin is such a good product that you never have to get out over your skis and say anything about it that it's not. And so really it's just education is the marketing. If someone understands Bitcoin, like the more they understand Bitcoin, the more of it they're going to buy. You go way deeper in their wallet if they understand it deeply. So that was it. I was just like, we're going to do something around all the marketing is going to be education, and then we're going to sell Bitcoin.
So it's going to be purely educational, and then here, oh, by the way, if you like what you learned, here's some Bitcoin you can buy.
Basically, yeah, just kind of just merging those as the efforts, or that's the people that we would hire and the efforts that we would undertake, is get really good at selling Bitcoin, really good at educating people about Bitcoin. And then, so Swan, we had the idea for launching with the automatic recurring purchase product, because you could do that in a very capital efficient way. And it was also kind of the thing that I think was most in tune with the Bitcoin zeitgeist in late 2019, early 2020 was, we should all just be stacking every day. I had realized how much better that was as a way to stack. So it was great for noobs that were just getting in, just to like make a one-time choice and just start stacking, like Netflix and chill, just like Swan and chill. Set it and forget it. It's really what you're going after, right? And it was also interesting that a lot of the people who were in Bitcoin the longest, that's how they preferred to do it. So, you had Matt and Marty pushing, just stack every Saturday on Cash App. And, but if you can automate that, now everybody has it kind of automated, but I think we were kind of the first ones to really popularize that particular service in the US anyway. So that was great, because you could not raise any venture capital from, basically all the VCs are into crypto, and all the funds back then. There's a couple of Bitcoin only funds now. There's both Elise and Chris Calicott with the Bitcoin Venture Fund. But back then, you'd have to take money from a crypto fund or a VC, which is, in our space, basically a crypto fund. And I didn't want those investors to have any power at all. So it was great launching with dollar cost averaging, because these are people that are kind of like low time preference, and their money could arrive from the ACH transfer before you had to buy the Bitcoin. And then we kind of ramped up as we got more capital, and we turned cash flow positive in like November of 2020. And then we added smash buys, which is like buy now. And we're essentially lending the money to the buyer for the 2 days or whatever until their money actually transfers by ACH. So you actually have to have that money sitting there to buy the Bitcoin to deliver it to the person who bought it 2 days ago when their money finally gets there. So you have to actually have like a decent chunk of capital to be able to do that. And then the market just kind of told us, we like your brand, we trust you. And then rich people around the world started hitting us up, asking if they could buy large chunks of Bitcoin from us. And so we started taking wire transfers and started doing, 8 and no 9-figure buys, but lots of 7 and 8-figure buys for people around the world. And then companies that, wanted to sign up with entity accounts and trust accounts, or just their actual LLC or C Corp buying from us. So it was kind of obvious that we needed another product and service layer there. So we started Swan Private Client Services. And that team is like, Stephen Lubka, Jean Balahadal on Twitter. Stefan Lavera is one of our full-time salespeople. Terrence Yang. So got a good team of folks there doing that. And yeah, it's been a good growth story. We, so
you've been launched just like a little bit over a year, right?
It's coming up on a year and a half. Yes. This is our 6th quarter. We'll be done with our 6th quarter in a week.
Wow. Cause that's, so I, for your reference, I first bought Bitcoin in March 2020. But I'd been lurking and paying attention for years at that point. So it's kind of like always been around for me. Swan, we
launched March 30th, I think.
Oh, perfect timing then. It's funny because I actually, the first time I interviewed Guy Swan, I thought he was part of it.
He's always been part of it.
Well, yeah. He helped
as an advisor, just not working.
I thought that the name came from him or something like that. And he was like, "Oh no," he's like, "I get emails all the time though, and just send them over to Cory and everybody and say, here you go."
I mean, the name evokes a lot of imagery and a lot of good feelings, and I think has a lot of relevance. Like, love or hate Nassim Taleb. It's easier to hate him now than it was a couple of years ago. But the concept of the black swan, and which are just a thing that happens that wasn't expected, right? And the effects of it can be positive or negative. So, and I was a big fan of those books. Still got the box set over there.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I argue with him on Twitter constantly.
You got to do that though, to just keep it entertaining.
Him being a jerk. So, but nevertheless, Bitcoin is like the biggest positive black swan in history,
Yeah.
And few understood, which is the key. Almost no black swan actually truly comes completely out of left field. Like it's just like very few people actually were looking forward or understanding it. And that's kind of what the cypherpunks were that were working on eCash. It was down to a few dozen people. Most had given up.
They were basically done with it, right?
Plugging away. A few just kept plugging away and eventually cracked it. And it's just freaking amazing for all of us, right? And then obviously we like the whole, swans, were once a ugly duckling and now it's this beautiful swan, and that's what Bitcoin is becoming. And that's what, Bitcoiners, become swans, as they self-actualize and start moving up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the deeper they get into Bitcoin. And as they ride out a cycle or two, you start to really have to search your soul and figure out, I don't know, I feel like we're ideating marketing copy for a couple of years from now here, but like find your swan or something like that.
Yeah, no,
spread your wings, all that kind of stuff.
That's not a bad idea, because I mean, I just saw somebody on Twitter say like, hey, I'm not like a big, I'm not a big whale or anything, but I finally just got to be a whole coiner, and like they've been working on it for a little over a year and everything. And it's like, I feel like that's what a lot of people, and with me being so new to it, is that, I reserve my opinions other than like the general understanding of like, yeah, this is the future of like bigger picture. I try and be careful because I'm like, I don't understand it yet. Like I haven't gone through a 4-year cycle yet. I haven't gone through a bear market. It was up only for a long time for me.
Yeah.
So you think that I think it's funny, when we look at cycles and everything, and I know that you're not a fan of the stock to flow, and we don't have to get into that, because to me, I just think I know that the number is going to go up and to the right, and like over a long period of time. What do you think the need for, or why do we have like a need for models? I mean, maybe it comes from the fact that as humans we hate uncertainty, but everybody keeps talking about, is this cycle like 2017 or 2013? And I had like an aha moment the other day where I was like, wait a minute, there were 2 cycles before and neither of them were the same. They weren't like each other. So why do we think that this one is going to be, why does it have to be like one of those? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have like a pretty deep stats background, which is probably unfair when it comes to things like this. I took upper level stats in undergrad, took a lot of stats in grad school, and consulting is like so much stats work. So I've just been doing it for a long time, and I've kind of it was developed bullshit detector for when I see numbers. I'm like, that's bullshit. But broadly, if you're looking at like 2 data points and now you're about to add a third, the way I would look at it is I would look at a geometric mean, and I would assume that the range of potential outcomes for the next data point would be like considering either the first data point to be the geometric mean, which would mean going to the high side, or the second data point, the 2017 cycle, could be the geometric mean going to the low side, because that increase was a lot smaller, right? So that's just kind of how I would look at it. 2013 was basically a 500x increase. 2017 was a 100x increase. And so, if you were going to add a third data point, you would be looking at somewhere between a 20x increase and a 2500x increase. So that's like your range.
Yeah.
And we already
pretty big range.
Yeah. So we already beat the potential increase. The increase to 65K was the very low end, which is, a 20x from 3,100. And, I don't think we're going to be hitting like 2,500x, which would be like 1.7 million or something like that.
We can hope, right?
We can hope. It'd be nice. But that's the kind of, if you were going to put any kind of like realistic confidence interval, at 95% or 99%, I mean, even for 95%, you would have to be looking at something like geometric means. for 3 data points.
Yeah.
And I just, it's this whole looking at models. I think people just like to, like you said, like to have something to believe in. They like a crew of other people. They don't really care if it's right or not. It's kind of fun to look at or whatever. Like, I like looking at charts. I like running my own numbers. I just like where people got way out over their skis was like abandoning logic and abandoning the principles of classical economic thought and thinking that somehow, human action didn't matter anymore and that it was just like pre-programmed. And, so
no matter
I
what
just,
you did, it was going to be that.
It was just going to do that. And obviously that's just false on its face. And we all know that. And then when you actually dig into the stats and you understand, like, once you adjust for autocorrelation, which is rife when you have a non-random variable that's actually included in both axes.
Yeah.
Once you adjust for autocorrelation in the S2F model, the R squared drops to 0.0. It actually drives nothing, and it's better off just as a price chart with a best fit line without the S2F variable being in it at all. That's leaving aside the whole, sort of misguided notion for the last, 3.5 years, that S2F is a proxy for scarcity, which it's not. It's related to scarcity, but it's not scarcity.
So explain that, because my smooth brain
it's okay. I don't want to go too deep into it, honestly. Like, but
we don't have to go too deep into it. But yeah, I'm just curious.
Broadly, scarcity is when right now at the market clearing price, there's a lot more demand than there is supply. That's all it means. And so really a high stock to flow doesn't have anything to do with upwards price volatility. If anything, it should actually decrease volatility. So that's what you should see, is that Bitcoin's price should be more stable over time, which makes sense logically. As stock to flow increases, you have a much bigger stock. What that means is that if there's a big spike in demand that dwarfs the flow, dwarfs the new supply coming onto the market, because you have this massive stock, you can absorb that shock because you can bring some of that stock to market. And we know this inherently, right? When the price of Bitcoin spikes to 100K, there's going to be a bunch of whales that haven't sold in 8 years that are going to bring some of that stock to market. So actually, when you have a very low stock to flow, like say oil, in many cases, like that's where you can get a big shock to the upside, like even bigger. So because there's no stock to bring to market. Or look at the energy market, right? So like energy lives on the grid. If there's no more energy on the grid and demand spikes, the prices go nuts in an unregulated market like in Texas, right? Because the stock to flow is super, super low. So we have a lot of just like, and I think, it's a mixed bag. Like we can talk about it here and, just kind of mix it up a little bit, but it's a mixed bag, because in a lot of ways you're just fighting a propaganda war, and the other side that's trying to denigrate Bitcoin is not fighting fair, and they're promoting false narratives every day. And so I totally understand a lot of the Austin Bitcoiners in particular kind of just like grabbing whatever the best narrative, like you try a bunch and whichever one goes, like that's the one you go with, because it's bringing people into Bitcoin regardless of like how perfectly true it is or not.
Yeah.
Because the other, like, it's just a propaganda war. And, a lot of these guys, like Brady on my team is, debate champion in high school, as was Pierre, as was Bitstein. Like a lot of these guys are like really well tooled in rhetoric and choosing wedge issues and like figuring out how to like hang your opponent viciously and finding what plays. And like now it's even more fun as a lot of, Bitcoiners with politics experience are getting involved. And this feels like, the next 4 or 5 years is politicians waking up to what a great issue Bitcoin is. And, I think you're just going to see people trying all kinds of different things and seeing what sticks. And, in some ways, I think some of this is like, I'm of two minds, because I want Bitcoin to win. And I'm so convinced of it being true that like, I can see why some people say like by any means necessary. Let's just make it win. It's so imperative. Like we'll use any tool in the book to like make it win. But then also I think it's part of what makes Bitcoin and the Bitcoin community so very strong is that Bitcoin is the truth machine. It both attracts people with high integrity and also takes anyone and makes them higher integrity as they get closer to it and as they understand it. Mm-hmm. And so like, you know, a big part of what I hate about like kind of the crypto space and just kind of bullshit purveyors in the finance industry in general is I hate false narratives. Mm-hmm. So I'm always kind of conflicted between like, you know, I ran an experiment a few days ago just to see what would happen. Like, I basically just posted like the most ridiculously like bullish tweet that I could think of, you know, just for fun, just to see if it would just go nuts. And it was like, you know, 4 or 5 times more likes than any tweet I've ever posted. Wow. And then I did it the next day and it was like my 4th best tweet ever as far as best performing. So like clearly the community just kind of like eats up this, you know, get out over your skis, post something super bullish, and that's what wins, and that's who gets big audiences, and that's who we end up listening to. So that's what we want. We want a support group to support our bullish thesis and help us have strong hands through these dips.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's hard for me because I struggle with that, like, where I just sit there and I'm like, the people just post like everything's bullish, you know what I mean? Like where it's like, it was raining today, so like that means it's going up, you know? And it's like, I'm just like, I don't know, maybe it's something with people named Cory that like I have a really hard time with. Like, I just can't stand bullshit and like, you know, things being said just to be said. And like, even with the political thing, I'm curious your thoughts on it, but like, you know, I like a log scale has been getting crushed for being, you know, trying to get politicians and to adopt Bitcoin and go that way. And there's like people on the other side that, you know, are like, you know, we don't need politicians, F them, you know, all that kind of stuff. And like, I just find myself somewhere in the middle where I'm like, you know, like it would be great if politicians adopted Bitcoin. Like it would make our lives a lot easier. I also don't think that they're gonna do it, but like, you know what I mean? It's just people pick a narrative and they're like, this is the way it has to be. And I'm like, there's a little nuance to the conversation and nobody really
it's all
going to
be on a spectrum. It's going to be on a spectrum. Like you're not going to have 100 senators and 435 reps all fully orange pilled, but it's really helpful to have a couple people on like a finance and entrepreneurship committee actually understand Bitcoin, and we have 0, and Brad Sherman runs it.
Yeah.
Right. So like, let's at least primary that dude.
Let's get him out,
and let's get him out, and at least signal to politicians. You know, my one goal is to. A lot of people are like trying to orange pill them, and that's great. And you know, I'll lend my team's resources to help them do that or whatever. You know, I'm a little bit more of a fighter, and so my goal is to just viciously penalize anyone that's anti-Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm trying to do. Like, that's why I started the whole Beat Brad Sherman thing. And then that turned into talking to the 2 primary challengers, realizing that Erica was probably the pole position challenger and was also like very open to talking to the Bitcoin community. The other guy is like all about like blockchain-y stuff and doesn't understand anything and is not really willing to learn, and is like in a distant 3rd place anyway. So I think it just makes sense for that. I'm, you know, basically a 1-issue voter. I just want Bitcoin to win.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I said to Dennis Porter, I said, I'm usually so cringe. Like 1-issue voters, it bothers me because I'm like, there's just like, again, there's nuance in life. You have to go through the nuance, but Bitcoin, if it wins, it solves all the other issues that you have. In theory, you can start solving the problems that you want to solve by fixing the money.
It'll solve a lot of them, and in a lot of those problems, like you said, I just think a lot of times I use this analogy a lot, or this visual, but like you go far enough left and far enough right, and you realize it's not a spectrum, it's a circle. They all hate injustice, and Bitcoin fixes this. You know, you go far enough left and right, and you meet at Bitcoin. You know, so I just I should say I'm actually like a 1-issue activist. I don't even know if I'll vote anymore. But definitely a 1-issue activist. But we'll see. I mean, I think politicians are just people. They're just humans. You know, I've known quite a few of them. I used to work on campaigns like in high school and through to my early career I think the last one I worked on was 2001, but I did for 9 years or something like that. I would get involved. Bitcoin doesn't need politics or politicians at all. It's going to do what it's going to do anyway. I'm also fighting for Bitcoiners, not just Bitcoin itself. I think Swan is a Bitcoiner company. Like, we're made up of Bitcoiners, and we're trying to make the lives of Bitcoiners better. We're trying to help them earn more. We're trying to help them stack sats more and better. We're trying to make sure they don't lose their Bitcoin, spend their Bitcoin, trade their Bitcoin away, get hacked. Like, we're in this to help mint new Bitcoiners and help Bitcoiners be better Bitcoiners.
Well, you guys are like the HODL company, because for anyone that doesn't know, you guys don't have a sell button.
What was that word you used? What was it?
The HODL company. A sell button,
what's sell? What's that?
Oh, you guys don't
sell. Yeah.
So it's like it's a thing that I think it goes up on a boat and catches wind.
Sail. We sell Bitcoin. You don't sell Bitcoin. No, there's no sell button. Obviously, people can just like hit us up and sell within minutes if they want to, but I kind of like that little bit of friction that stops people from like freaking out. And we get so many notes like 2 or 3 days after a dip or a wick or something, and people are just like, thank God they couldn't just like open the app and sell.
That is what everybody needs, because if more apps did that. When the big crash happened in May, I had moved a lot right before that, and it was no longer on an exchange, and I was like, thank God, because I would have, it's human nature to want to bail, and so what was the origin of that? Other than not wanting people to panic and sell. Was that a hard sell in the boardroom with the team to say, hey, let's make they can buy, but they can't get out? Not really, but
they can sell anytime they want. So just making them jump through like one tiny little hurdle makes you think about it a little bit more. I think that's all it is. So we didn't have a sell button when we only had the automatic recurring purchases, because all you could do was just accumulate Bitcoin, and that was it. So you had to make an active choice to add a sell button if you wanted to. Like, it's there. Obviously, we can execute it, and we could put a button on the site and in the app if we wanted to, and we've just chosen not to.
Now, how do you guys see is the regulation that the U.S. put through in that infrastructure bill, is that going to affect you guys negatively, or what are your thoughts on what's going to come out of that?
Doesn't affect Bitcoin one bit, not at all.
I like that, because a lot of people say we need this for Bitcoin to succeed, and kind of like you said, it's going to happen. It's going to do its thing. It's a living thing. It's going.
Game theoretically, like, it's going to be just absolutely massive, because that's all the reasons that we know. Like, the shelling point is like what I think other people are going to think. That other people are going to think. And that's going to be Bitcoin. It's like, let's meet up in New York tomorrow. Yeah. Right. And 90% of people meet at Grand Central Station at noon if you don't have the time and the place.
That's true.
Right. That's true. That's the shelling point. Right. So the other people say observation deck at Empire State Building, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I'm in the minority. I'm an Empire State guy, and I'll probably miss all my connections, but
you're an Empire State guy. Is that from the Sleepless in Seattle?
I guess. Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like the highest point in the middle of the city, 34th and 5th. So it just seems like where you'd be. But yeah, I guess it's Sleepless in Seattle. But yeah, I think lost my train of thought. Bitcoiners, sell button. I don't know where I was going with this.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll pick it up. I wanted to ask you about longevity in Bitcoin. So you've been around for 4 years, and I think my goal is to try and stay in Bitcoin as long as possible before getting burnt out or whatever. So where I love to talk about it, but then I reach like my point where I'm like, you know what, I literally can't talk about it again right now. Like I gotta step back. So what do you think the key is for people to have longevity in Bitcoin and not get burnt out and turn into a shitcoiner?
Well, I mean, I think you can think about the future implications of what happens as Bitcoin gains steam and think about the opportunities that are going to be there for you, the new problems that will be created and what the solutions to those may be. And it's easy because the future is around you. It's other places in the world. Things that are happening in Bitcoin in the United States are not happening in some other places yet. So they can look at it here and say like, oh, well, that's going to come to my country. We can look at what's happening in Nigeria and say, well, if I'm entrepreneurial or want to get involved in some way, I can assume that that's going to start happening in other countries that reach their tipping point. And, so I think there's always kind of new things. And then when you look at, the 8 or 9 different fields that maybe not mastery, but like pretty decent, at least shallow understanding of economics and classical thought and history and politics and, all these other things, computer science, cryptography, there's so many different things you can dive into. One of the things that we're going to be doing a lot more of, I kind of hinted at earlier, is spending a lot of time on educating people. As an industry, we spent 3 years teaching people, why and how to buy Bitcoin. And I think we're going to spend a lot more time going forward teaching people how to make more money so they can buy more Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So it's like a natural adjacent community. Is like, how do you get better jobs? How do you get paid more? Like, what are the tools that you use to extract more? How do you mine fiat better so that you can stack more sats?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where my mind is right now, because a lot of people, they want to just buy Bitcoin. I think that maybe that's where you get frustrated. You buy Bitcoin and you think it's going to make me rich. And
it's not, because you're never going to want to sell it.
Yeah, it's true.
So, I think in the end, we'll actually have like very sort of deep, liquid, very low interest in fiat terms markets, that'll drive over collateralized, or Bitcoin backed loans. I think will be like 1 or 2% per year or something like that, ridiculously low. Whereas today they're, 8 to 10% from a reputable business and, maybe 4 or 6 from a shady business. I think good businesses will lend you fiat at, less than inflation.
It's I mean, I thought that was going to take off and really suck up a lot of the supply, people locking up Bitcoin into loans, and thank God I didn't do it because it could have got liquidated.
Yeah, I mean that's a risk. Yeah, you don't want to do like 2 or 3x loan to value. You need like a big stack, and you want to be doing like 10x.
Yeah,
and that can't be your whole stack either. Like like that should only be part of your stack. Or at least whatever, you could do the 2.5x loan to value, but also make sure that you could fund it with lots more Bitcoin from your cold storage if you were going to do that.
To make sure you don't get liquidated.
It's much cleaner if you don't do that. I don't know. At the end of the day, like at some point, a lot of people around the world are going to have substantially all of their net worth in Bitcoin, and they're going to have to spend it. Like
one day we'll have to actually spend.
It will make sense at some point because you'll have nothing else to spend. You see like a lot of the people that experiment with Lightning are people that have had Bitcoin since 2012, 2013, because they actually need to spend some Bitcoin in many cases.
Yeah. If you've been holding it that long, what's
it's 99% of their net worth almost by definition if you've been holding that long. So they have to spend it. And a lot of us around the world will be like that in 10 years.
Yeah. I actually made one of my companies full on into it. I guess I can announce now. I was going to kind of do like try and go like through the press, but I don't think Bitcoin Magazine was really interested in whatever. So my streaming platform that we just launched in our marketing campaigns taking off next week. Our investor came in and did it all in Bitcoin. And so I actually have to sell Bitcoin sometimes in order to pay for things because, I saw people always say, I never sold a sat, and finally I saw somebody say, if you've never sold a sat, that means you're not long enough Bitcoin. So it made me feel better because I feel guilty every time, where I'm like, oh God, I have to part with this Bitcoin, but it's specifically to pay for something, like
Yeah.
as business expenses. So is that where is the Swan HODL Bitcoin? Is that where you guys are at?
Yeah, we try to keep as much in Bitcoin as we can. Yeah, so I think we take most of our fees other than payroll and just keep it in Bitcoin.
Is that something that Swan could eventually get into, is managing payroll and things like that? Um,
You could, but it's so unnecessary, really. Like I don't want to get into like HR services, and usually
yeah.
payroll is kind of bundled with some of these other things. But I mean, people have been paying themselves in Bitcoin through Swan since day one because you're just looking at your fiat inflow. If you have a bunch of excess liquid capital, you should, with an asset that has a lot of upward skewed volatility, you should put that in now because time and market is the deal, right? But then if you have more fiat earnings, you should think about how much of that you want to put into Bitcoin every week or every month, and just set up that automatic recurring purchase plan. It's frictionless, it's free, and just get paid in Bitcoin. You don't need an employer involved in that in any way.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. And I mean,
Yeah.
I guess in theory, I've been paying myself in Bitcoin anyways because I just immediately
Yeah,
turn around and dump it.
exactly. Yeah. So it's the same thing. I mean, like, some of these athlete announcements, like I'm going to get paid in Bitcoin. Obviously, no team is sending them Bitcoin. They have an exchange account and they take the USD pay just like you and I do, and they buy Bitcoin with it. That's getting paid in Bitcoin, and then they get in the press.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was my what I was conflicted with making our quote unquote announcement. Because if I really wanted to make waves with it, I mean, we literally that it happened back in like May. So we've just been kind of like, I was like, it's not really important. We don't need to push it out. And I reached out to Bitcoin Magazine, and they were like, it's not really, they're pretty selective with their stories. And I was like, that's fine, whatever. I mean, it's not a big deal to me because really it's just a unit of account. And I will say, I want to do my investors. They were not Bitcoiners per se. They were interested, and I sold them on it. But they held and never flinched over the summer. And like, I felt like an idiot all summer because we got this investment in and then immediately lost 20% value.
Yeah.
And I just like all summer long was like, this was, like I knew that I was right. I knew I made the right decision, but like I was just waiting every time I talked to them for them to be like, so that was pretty stupid, wasn't it? And but no, then it bounced back, and they're happy now, and now we're trying to get some Bitcoin content on there. We'll talk about that once we're done recording, but you guys made a documentary about if you want to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like we're just kind of helping with the distribution and the marketing. So we call it presented by Swan, but really just like all credit to the producer and the director. So Ricky Posner and Jamie King, like they just did a beautiful job. These guys are award winning. Enrique started his career working for Almodovar in Spain and used to run, European distribution for one of the big studios, I think Fox. And then Jamie's won a ton of awards over the years for shorts and documentaries and stuff like that. So like this is an awesome team. They called the movie This Machine Greens, and it's basically just a nice, quick, but really in-depth 35-minute doc on Bitcoin and the energy markets and Bitcoin energy consumption and kind of like what the truth of that all is. And I think it's kind of a calling card for them because they have a feature-length documentary that they're going to be selling through to like Netflix and Prime called Trust. That's just about Bitcoin more broadly. So I think this was kind of like a proof of concept for them to be able to raise the money for the feature length. But yeah, there was a fancy premiere in New York last night, 7 p.m. in New York, and I think we did the first airing on the Swan YouTube channel last week. And people just absolutely love this thing. It features all your favorite Bitcoiners talking about this stuff. So it's good.
Yeah.
This Machine Greens, check it out.
Yeah. And hopefully we want to have a lot of Bitcoin content. We have Richard James's 3 films. We put them together as a series, calling it Person State, and just making it available. Like you don't have to be a subscriber to our platform. It's we have some things, we have them under free speech, like quote unquote free speech, because we are for free speech, but we're also, those are things that are available to anybody that downloads Movies Plus. Download, no, I'm not going to show my platform right now. But I think that's important, and that we have more education like that because of the speed that the FUD comes out. So with the energy consumption market, I mean, do you think, are we going to see a lot more oil and gas companies start jumping on Bitcoin and mining? That's kind of been all of a sudden a sexy topic where people, are talking about mining. And do you see that evolving in the future here, or do you think that they're going to ultimately be like, I can't handle the volatility? So,
I mean, they don't. Yes, so you can make money by getting involved in it, so they will.
Yeah, good point.
And they don't have to hold the Bitcoin that they earn through these deals or through these operations, whether they do it in partnership with somebody else or whether they do it themselves. Like, you can extract a lot of value, just from the flared natural gas, let alone, using, excess supply of any energy source, wherever it may be, for mining Bitcoin. So I think that you'll just continue to see the merging of Bitcoin mining with the global energy industry over time. And, I think you'll see lots of fights about that. And you'll see some people pushing, probably the much more, I would say, probably true narrative that energy is a product, and that, broadly energy is clearly massively beneficial for humanity and for humans. And that, more energy solves way more problems than it creates.
Yeah.
And that we've pulled almost everybody out of poverty and, decreased climate related deaths by 99% in the last century because of more energy production. So I think you'll see a lot of people kind of stand firm with that narrative and not give an inch. And that's great that they do. And then you'll also see a lot of people just kind of like playing politics and just kind of like trying to win the battles. Like, the war is over here, which is just like more energy is good. And then the battles are like, well, okay, let's create a mining council and let's talk about, Bitcoin is green or can be green and helps the grid and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, like, I think we as a species, I would hope, will eventually land on the truth.
Yeah. The truth I've found always wins eventually.
Not so far, right? Like, we're living in a world with 8 billion people, and we're surrounded by lies at almost every level. Like,
Yeah, that is something interesting, because I guess maybe more on a personal level where, I can be happy with myself and at peace with myself for not, for telling the truth. Like, it's so much harder. But this is kind of not Bitcoin related, but you brought it up and it's been on my mind lately. And since I'm doing a freedom of speech platform, I wonder when did it become so, like, perceived to be socially acceptable or morally acceptable to just lie? You know what I mean? Because both sides of the aisle, both left and right with media, it's just blatant lies, and people they don't even care if you get called out on it. They know they're going to get called out. They know people can Google and read the past of what they said. And yeah, I don't know. I guess that's a good point when you said, has truth really won? Where do you think Bitcoin pushes that truth and kind of makes people be honest?
I mean, I do. I mean, I absolutely do. Like I said, I really do think it attracts high integrity people, and that it makes people care more about their reputation and really think deeply about their legacy. Because, I mean, in some ways, just Bitcoiners that get deep into it and start stacking a lot, they kind of expect to have generational wealth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now they're actually like thinking deeply about what kind of values they're going to instill in their children or future children. And they're thinking about, it's 7th generation thinking and stuff like that. So I think they try to shape up, they start eating better, they start working out more, they try to fix broken relationships, they spend more time thinking about their kids' education. Like, it kind of makes you think way more deeply about how you're spending your time on this planet. And I think that's very much because, you have a way to, store the products of your time in a fair way.
Yeah.
For the first time, you have a way to preserve the effort that you've put in that's better than anything that we've had before.
Makes me think of that Justin Timberlake movie. I think it was called In Time. Did you ever see that, where like time was a currency?
Yeah. I mean, time and Bitcoin, the only constants. Yeah, I think both energy and time are really good proxies for Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is a concept that draws from, it's directly tied to both. It takes energy and turns it into a time chain, right? It's the only vector. I think, Gigi on Twitter is probably the most eloquent, regular voice talking about Bitcoin as a time chain, and just go look up some of his big threads. Use Twitter advanced search, just Google Twitter advanced search, and then put in DirGigi as the handle and search for like more than 1,000 likes or more than 2,000 likes or something. You can see a bunch of anybody's threads that way. Little hack for you. And then, on the energy stuff, like it's just fascinating. Anyway, I think if I were going to queue up or tee up one person that I think has the best and most frequent conversations about what Bitcoin is doing to people, and has like a pretty even-handed, it's not like way out over his skis, like, oh, we're all super people, the remnant, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think John Vallis is probably having like the most interesting conversations and spends the most time thinking about what Bitcoin is doing for people's integrity. I really like listening to him.
Yeah, he was my second guest, and just the other day I was like, I gotta reach back out to him, because he's such a good, calm voice, although I gotta like maybe exercise a little bit more if he's gonna make me do it shirtless, because he's been doing like 2 shirtless podcasts now, and I was like, oh crap, if this is gonna become a thing, I gotta exercise a lot more than I'm not out of shape, but I could be in better shape, that's for sure. I got a little bit of the dad bod going,
just gotta own it, man. It's all good.
Yeah, that's true. Just go with it. Like a Bert Kreischer. I mean, he's got more than a dad bod, but like it's just funny. You know that comedian that takes his shirt off all the time and he's like chubby and everything. And he said, he was like, I actually felt uncomfortable with a shirt on, and like it felt like fatter until he took his shirt off. And he's like, he just is like comfortable. So he does all his stand up with no shirt on.
That's awesome.
And he's not like and ripped or anything like that. That's interesting, the time aspect. I love Gigi. I recommend anybody listening to look up Gigi's writings. And I had this thought too, because you ever think about, it's a little bit of a deep thought, but like talk about like timelines, and people talk about time as a concept, and we always think that time is linear, but like in reality it's like up straight up and down, and it's all happening at the same time, and we just have created this time construction. And Bitcoin's the first thing that actually has put time in physical reality. You know what I mean? Like you could have a watch, but anybody can manipulate it, but you can't manipulate Bitcoin. So it's just something I had a deep thought the other night while I was looking at the stars.
Yeah, that's Gigi's whole. It's the first time that we've actually had like an immutable vector of time. That doesn't require, it's a trustless. We can all look at it, and we will all, with enough math and cryptography background, will all come to the same conclusion that time is progressing and that the blockchain is an accurate record of when things happened. Yeah. And you don't need any trusted third party to record anything, and you don't need to dig in and see if you trust that person and trust the people that vouch for them, and et cetera. Like you can fuck with literally everything except for the Bitcoin time chain.
And then don't trust, verify. That's the beauty of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Cory, look, I know we got to run here, and I probably about half my questions, so we could eventually sometime do this again, because I like very balanced, nuanced, and calm, demeanor when it comes to Bitcoin, even though maybe we can all get a little riled up on the internet from time to time. But I appreciate you coming on, and thanks for doing this.
No, absolutely, my pleasure, and congrats on getting going with the streaming platform. Look forward to hear more about that. And Cory to Cory.
Yeah.
Team Bitcoin for the win.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right.